In the vast, sun-scorched plains of Montana, where the horizon stretched like an endless promise and the wind whispered secrets through the tall grasses, lived Elijah Hawthorne, a rugged rancher whose hands were calloused from years of taming wild horses and mending fences under the relentless sky. At 35, Elijah was a man of few words, his broad shoulders bearing the weight of a solitary life after losing his parents young and inheriting the sprawling Hawthorne ranch. His days were filled with the rhythm of cattle drives, the crack of whips, and the quiet satisfaction of a hard day's work, but his nights were lonely echoes in a big empty house until fate brought him Amelia Sinclair, a delicate flower from the bustling streets of Boston, promised to him through a mail-order bride arrangement that seemed as improbable as rain in July. Amelia, just 19, with porcelain skin, cascading auburn hair, and eyes like polished emeralds, had fled the suffocating grip of her overbearing family, seeking adventure and love in the untamed West, but nothing could have prepared her for the raw intensity of Elijah or the realities of frontier life. Their wedding was a simple affair under a canopy of stars, witnessed by a handful of ranch hands and the local preacher, with Amelia in a borrowed lace gown that fluttered like a ghost in the evening breeze, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and terror as she whispered her vows, sealing her fate to this stranger who looked at her with a hunger that made her cheeks flush. That first night, in the master bedroom of the ranch house, with its wooden beams creaking like old bones and the scent of pine mingling with the faint aroma of leather from Elijah's boots, Amelia trembled as he approached, his large frame casting a shadow over her petite form, his rough fingers gently untying the ribbons of her nightgown, revealing her untouched body to the dim lantern light. "You're beautiful, darlin'," he murmured, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down her spine, but as he pressed closer, his body heavy and insistent, the pain was sharp and unexpected, like a knife twisting in her core, making her gasp and push against his chest with small, frantic hands. "It hurts," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes, her voice breaking the silence like fragile glass, and Elijah, ever the patient man forged by the patience required to break a stubborn colt, pulled back immediately, his brow furrowing with concern as he cradled her face, wiping away her tears with a thumb that smelled of earth and sweat. "We don't have to rush this, Amelia. We've got all the time in the world," he assured her, his patience a warm blanket wrapping around her fears, and though disappointment flickered in his steel-gray eyes, he held her through the night, their bodies entwined in innocent closeness, her head on his chest listening to the steady beat of his heart that matched the distant howl of coyotes outside. But as the days turned into weeks, Amelia's determination grew, her love for Elijah blossoming like wildflowers after a spring rain, fueled by his kindness in teaching her to ride, his gentle guidance in the kitchen as she learned to bake biscuits from scratch, and the way he looked at her across the dinner table as if she were the only star in his sky. Yet each night, when they retired to their bed, the attempt to consummate their marriage ended the same way, with her whispered plea, "It hurts, let's try again tonight," her voice laced with hope and embarrassment, and Elijah's patience holding firm like the roots of an ancient oak, though cracks began to form beneath the surface as his desires simmered, unspoken and unfulfilled. The ranch demanded his attention, with a harsh winter approaching, calves to brand, and fences to repair after a storm that had torn through like an angry spirit, leaving debris scattered across the pastures, and Elijah threw himself into the work, his muscles aching from dawn till dusk, but his mind wandering back to Amelia's soft curves and the promise of intimacy that eluded them. Amelia, sensing his growing frustration, redoubled her efforts, reading borrowed books on womanhood from the town library during her rare trips to the general store, practicing relaxation in the quiet afternoons while churning butter, her thoughts a whirlwind of longing to please her husband, to bridge the gap between her innocence and his experience. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Elijah returned from the fields covered in dust, his shirt clinging to his sweat-slicked torso, and found Amelia waiting on the porch, her dress hugging her figure in a way that made his breath catch. Dinner was a tense affair, the air thick with unspoken words, and as they climbed the stairs to their room, Amelia turned to him with resolve in her eyes. "It hurts, but let's try again tonight," she whispered, her hands slipping into his, leading him to the bed where she had lit extra candles, their flames dancing like fireflies, casting a warm glow that softened the edges of her nervousness. Elijah nodded, his patience tested but intact, and they began slowly, his kisses trailing fire down her neck, his hands exploring with a tenderness that belied his strength, but again the pain came, sharper this time, her body tensing like a bowstring, and she bit her lip to stifle a cry. He stopped, holding her close, but something shifted in him that night, the way her words echoed in his mind, a plea that felt like a chain, binding his desires in frustration. The next morning, over coffee brewed strong and black, Elijah's silence was heavier than usual, his eyes distant as he stared out at the herd grazing peacefully, and Amelia felt a pang of guilt, wondering if she was failing as a wife, her heart aching to make things right. Days blurred into a routine of chores and stolen glances, with Amelia helping in the barn, her laughter ringing out as she fed the chickens, her presence a light in Elijah's otherwise monotonous life. But the nights grew strained, her whispered, "Let's try again tonight," becoming a ritual that ended in defeat, and Elijah's patience, once as vast as the prairie, began to erode like sandstone under relentless wind. He started spending more time in the fields, riding out at first light and returning after dark, his excuses thin as he claimed extra work with the impending cattle drive to the railhead in Billings, but Amelia knew better, sensing the distance growing like weeds in a neglected garden. One stormy afternoon, thunder rumbling like distant artillery, Amelia confronted him in the stable as he brushed down his favorite stallion, Thunder, the horse's coat gleaming under his strokes. "Elijah, talk to me. I know something's wrong," she said, her voice steady despite the fear knotting her stomach, and he paused, his hand still on the brush, before turning to her with eyes stormy as the sky outside. "Amelia, I love you more than the land itself, but this, waiting, it's wearing on me. I don't want to hurt you, but a man has needs," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion, and she stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm, feeling the muscle tense beneath her touch. "Then teach me, show me how to make it better. I want this too," she replied, her cheeks burning, and in that moment, under the hay-scented eaves with rain pattering on the tin roof, they shared a kiss that ignited something new, a spark of understanding that promised change. That night, as lightning